Welcome to Atheon Analytics Tutorials. In this video we're going to be looking at how to use formulae in Omniscope. Formulae in Omniscope work in very much the same way as they do in Excel, and we'll see as we go through a couple of examples that the syntax is normally identical to how you will be familiar using it in Excel. We're going to look at a few different types of formulae that we can add in Omniscope and a few ways in which we can do it. So to set the scene, we're looking at a file of data here which is some invoices which are overdue for payment, and we have some information on the table on the left hand side which tells us the invoice numbers, the customers, the date on which the invoice was due, the amount, the number of items on the invoice. On the right hand side we have a bar chart showing us the overdue debt by date. So first of all, here in the table on the left hand side I have a blank column called average item cost. And in this case I'm going to calculate the average cost per item from the two bits of information that I already have, i.e. the amount of the invoice and the number of items on that invoice. So because I already have a column here in my data, I'm going to just right click that column heading, choose the bottom option which says change to formula field, and we'll see this formula box appear, and it's in here that we type the syntax for our formula. We'll see that formulae behave in very much the same way as they do in Excel. So for example, a forward slash denotes a divide by and a star would be multiply by. However, in Excel of course we don't have column names, we have columns which are referenced with letters A, B, C, D and so on. Here in Omniscope all our columns have names. So rather than having to remember the specific column that our data falls in, it's a bit more intuitive. So what we're going to do here is a very simple formula which is the amount of the invoice divided by the number of items on that invoice. Now we can type column headings in, or by using the insert field button I'm going to say I want to put in the invoice amount, using my keyboard type in a forward slash and then select the number of items on the invoice. So I can see the formula in the box up at the top. There's a result showing me that the formula works correctly. We'll be given an error message if it doesn't, just like in Excel, and I'm now going to click on OK, and we'll see that it populates all of the rows within that column. It treats every row within a column exactly the same, so we don't have to copy and paste the formula down again as you would have to do in Excel. You'll also note that the column heading has turned blue. This is just denoting that this is a formula field. This is a dynamic formula, and if I were to overtype any of the numbers in the preceding two columns, obviously the average item cost would change. The next formula I'm going to do will be a formula to work out how old these invoices or how overdue they are. And we know that we have a date field, so this due date in our data. I'm going to put in a new column and calculate how old those dates are. So using a different method this time, I'm going to go to the formulas button on the top of the table view tools and add a formula field. And I'm going to call this days overdue. So in this case it brings the formula box straight up and I can type my formula in. Now within Omniscope there's a number of functions, some the same as Excel and also some additional functions, and we can see all of them in the functions list over here. And then from the drop down menu there's a very long list of formulae. Now in this case I'm going to use a formula called a date diff or a date difference, and you'll see when you select the appropriate function it automatically puts in the correct syntax for you in the formula box. All I need to now do is point it at the right fields of data. So in this case I'm going to tell it to take the due date, then by typing in today it will always calculate today's date whenever we open the file, and then I'm going to tell it I want it to return a value in days. And we can see there again, having typed the formula correctly, we have a result in the box. Click OK. And this time it's going to add a new field in our data. We'll see that appear in the table, and it's automatically calculated the days overdue, so how old these debts are. And the last formula field I'm going to put in here is a formula to categorize my debtors, so by their age of debt. Again I'm going to use the add formula field button, and for my new field called category I'm going to use an if function which allows me to categorize data based on the value that it finds in the column. So I'm going to say here if the column days overdue is smaller than 30, i.e. if the debt was in the last 30 days, I'm going to call this good, and anything else bad. And again, clicking OK will now put in a new column into my data, categorizing based on the age of the debtors, and we can see there it's categorized them as either good or bad. Now, having done all of this, it's automatically been building filters over on the right hand side, and it's populated the values of those columns within the filters. So I can see here I have a category for good or bad data, and I can select my good and bad debtors. I can also select on the number of days overdue, and I can use my new categorizations to provide new views of the data. In this case, I'm going to put a pie chart in here, splitting out my good and my bad categorizations, i.e. my recent debt and my old debt. For more information about how functions and formulae work, you can go to the Visokio website, visokio.com, and then within the resources section and the functions guide, there's a lot of help here telling you exactly how to use formulae and perhaps how some of the less familiar ones work if you've not used them before. So in this case, we've used largely mathematical formulae. There are a number of other options, including geocoding of data, and there's a video on that in the Atheon series on mapping and geocoding. All of these techniques are taught on the Atheon Introductory Omniscope course. For more information about that, contact us at info@atheon.co.uk or give us a call on 08444 145 501.